Hello and welcome to Pixel Magic Tutorials. I am your host Geekman, and today I'm going to teach you how to create a Dragon Ball Z Dragon Ball. That's from the anime Dragon Ball Z, and it's the Dragon Ball that they're always searching for. So there are a few assumptions, one extra from my normal two. So the first assumption, as always, is that you're using Photoshop CC 2015 or later. If you're using an earlier version, some of the effects may not work as expected. The second assumption is I am using Windows, and if you're using a Mac, then whenever I say hit the Control key on your keyboard, that means hit the Command key on a Mac keyboard. And when I say hit the Alt key on the keyboard, that means the Option key on a Mac keyboard. Now, the third and brand new assumption that I'm working with today is that you have already watched my tutorial on how to create a glass sphere action in Photoshop. Now, if you haven't watched that tutorial, you can find a link in the description below, and I suggest that you do watch it because it's kind of important for creating this entire look. So I'll give you a few moments to go watch that, and then come on back and watch this to figure out how to make the Dragon Ball. So I'm hoping that you've gone and watched that, and you're back, and now we'll begin. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is open up our Actions palette where we have our glass sphere action. Now, all you're going to have to do is press this. So find the action palette. You can press Alt F9. You can go to Window and Actions and Alt F9, like it says right here, or you just click on that and the actions will pop up. Click on glass sphere and then click play. It will play, and you will get this option dialog box popping up for the lens flare. And right here, this is where we're going to change things around. We're going to make the brightness 115, and the type is going to be the 105 millimeter prime. That's what we're going to be using. Now, we're going to want the flare to be in the center, but more towards the center part, right about there. Okay, roughly the same as where it was when we created the original flare, but we're going to make it slightly lower in the screen. Then we're going to hit OK, let it finish its whole thing, and we now have our glass sphere. And what we're going to do is we are going to then go to File, Save As, and we're going to change the name of this to from glass sphere, which is what our glass sphere action did. And we're going to now save this as Dragon Ball. Okay, and then we're going to hit OK. So now we have our Dragon Ball. We can close out the Actions palette. Now we're good to go. So we have our glass sphere here, and we're going to rename the glass sphere layer as, oh no, we're going to leave that. We're not going to rename that. We're going to leave that as glass sphere. And then what we're going to do is make sure that our rulers are visible. Now you can make sure that they're visible by hitting Control R on your keyboard, or you can go up here to View and Rulers and make sure that that is checked. Then we're going to rotate our glass sphere by hitting Control T to bring up the transform tool and go up to the upper right, or any corner really, and right above it, it turns into this curved two-headed arrow. And then we're going to just turn this so that the brightest part is pointing here in the upper right-hand corner-ish, somewhere right about there-ish. Then we will hit Enter on our keyboard. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the layer mode from screen to lighten. Okay, that's going to make a difference later. You don't see a difference now, but you will later. And then we're going to give our glass sphere layer a couple of layer styles. So let's go down here to layer styles, and we're going to give this an inner shadow. So the inner shadow that we're going to give it is going to be linear light. Color is going to be black. So all zeros. Opacity is going to be only at 10%. Our angle is going to be -130, and use global light, as always, is unchecked. Our distance is going to be 30. Choke is 10. Size is 20. Our contour is going to be linear, which is this line one right here that cuts it in half. Anti-alias is unchecked, and noise is 0. And then we're also going to give it an inner glow. So let's go to inner glow, and we're going to give it linear dodge is going to be the blend mode. Our opacity is going to be 52%. Noise is 0. The color that we're using is going to be D21C18. And that's okay. And then we're going to go to softer for technique. Edge is checked. Choke is 0. And the size is 204 pixels. Then we're going to make the contour is going to be ring double, which is this 2 peak one here. Anti-aliased is checked. Range is going to be 75%, and jitter is 0. And that right there is all that we have to do with the glass sphere. So we hit OK, and we've got this weird looking kind of reddish tinged bubble going on. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to minimize the effects, and then we're going to hide our glass sphere because we don't want to see it right now. And we're going to select our background. Okay. And what we're going to do now is select our gradient tool. You can hit G on the keyboard, or you can go over here to your gradient tool in your tool picker. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on the gradient editor. And we're going to create this gradient right here. Now, the first left-hand most color stop is going to be set at the 25% location, and the color that we're using is FF0000, which is pure red. Okay, and then color stop 2 over here, which will be at location 100%, is going to be kind of a goldy yellow, so it's going to be FFCC00, so FFCC00, and that is going to be the color of our gradient. Now the gradient type that we're going to use is going to be this diamond pattern, diamond gradient. Mode is going to be normal. Opacity is 100%. Reverse is unchecked. Dither and transparency are both checked. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to drag out first from the left and from the right, from the left and from the top, we're going to drag out 2 guides from our ruler. So you click and drag down, and you'll get this guide coming out, and it will snap to the center. You'll see it snap, and you'll feel it snap right in the center because it'll go there and it'll be hard to pull it away. As you can see, I go up a little and then it pops up. And if I go down, it pops down. So once it's in the center, it will stick there and just let it go. And do the same thing from the left to the right so that it goes right into the center like that. And you now have a center point for your document. So what we're going to do now with our gradient is we are going to click in the center, and holding down the Shift key on our keyboard, drag up to the upper right corner. Okay, then we are going to let go of the left mouse button and let go of Shift, and we will have this star pattern-ish kind of gradient. The next thing that we need to do is go to our old friend up here at Filter, Render, Lens Flare. And we're going to do this directly on our background so it will look exactly correct. So this is what we're going to do here. We're going to make this a brightness of 130. Okay, so it's very, very bright. And we are going to make the lens type the 50 to 300 zoom. Okay, so it's bright and small. And we're going to make this originate a little bit lower, more towards the center. Right about there, but still keeping it as vertical as possible. Hard to do in such a small preview window, but that's what we're going to do. Okay, then we're going to hit OK, and we've got our lens flare. And then we're going to go to Filter, Distort, Polar Coordinates, and Rectangular to Polar. Hit OK, and now we've got this kind of a look. And then this is how we're going to turn it into a ball. We are going to Control and then click on the thumbnail image of glass sphere. That will make a selection of the glass sphere layer, which is the perfect circle. So you click on that by holding down Control, and you'll see it makes a perfect circle. We are then going to hit Control C for copy and Control V for paste, and we now have a new layer of the ball itself. We will then name this layer Inner Sphere, and we now have our inner sphere. Now what we need to do is turn on our glass sphere so we can see what we're doing. And then we're going to rotate our inner sphere. So make sure inner sphere is selected and hit Control T. And then we're going to rotate this until the shiny part is in the bottom left side, like so. There. Hit Enter, and we now have a shiny portion. It's hard to see my cursor. Hold on. We have a shiny portion up here where the light is coming from, and then we have a refraction on the inside of the ball down here, and then these bigger oval reflections and refractions that are showing you the outer edge of the ball. So what we're going to do now is we're going to give our inner sphere a layer style that's going to help it look a little bit more cartoony realistic, I want to say. It's not going to look realistic, but it will look like it's part of an animation realistically. So let's go to our layer styles, and let's give us an inner shadow. Now the inner shadow that we're going to do is going to be a blend mode of multiply. And we are going to make the color black, so it's the same color. Opacity will now be at 20%. So let's change that to 20%. Our angle is going to be -130. Use global light is unchecked. Distance now will be 14. Choke will now be 0. And size will now stay at 20. Contour is going to be linear. Anti-alias is unchecked, and noise is 0. The next thing that we're going to do is give this a satin kind of feel on the inside, and the blend mode will be screen. So let's find screen. The color that we're using is going to be 585858, just like that. Okay, and the opacity is going to be 30%. The angle that we're using is going to be at 40. Distance is going to be 100. And the size is going to be 150, which I believe is pretty big. The contour that we're using is going to be rounded steps. So rounded steps is this guy right here. Pop on up, rounded steps. Okay, and anti-alias and invert. Invert is unchecked, anti-alias is checked. So invert is unchecked. Okay, and that is all that we have to do with that. See? And let's show you before. You can barely see it, but on the outside edge, it gives it just a little bit more realistic look to it. And then we can close that. Now, the next thing that we need to do is create a hue saturation adjustment layer that is above the inner sphere, so it only affects the inner sphere. So we're going to go down here to our adjustment layers, and we are now going to put in a hue saturation adjustment layer. And what we're going to do is something very simple right over here. For hue, we are now going to make this -7. So -7 to make it a little bit redder. See, if I turn this off, it's kind of orangey yellow. And if I turn it on, it is more of a reddish look to it, which is more in keeping with the style of the Dragon Balls from the anime. So what we want to do is we want to make hue saturation only affect the inner sphere, nothing else. So the way that you do that is you can go click on it, and then in between, if you hold down the Alt key on your keyboard, if you hover your mouse in between hue saturation 1 and inner sphere, you'll turn into this box with the little arrow, and that will now it will only affect the inner sphere if you click on it. See, if I do it again and click, it goes away, and now it's back. So see how it has this little arrow? That means it's only affecting the inner sphere and not any other layers. So if I hide the inner sphere, this also stops working. So hue saturation is no longer affecting our bottom layer. So now we've got our hue saturation, we've got our inner sphere, we've got our glass sphere. So what is this missing? Well, it's missing the stars. The stars that belong here in the center of the Dragon Ball, because there were a bunch of different Dragon Balls that they needed to find, and each one was designated with the number of stars that were within it. So there was the first Dragon Ball, which had the 1 star, and then a second one that had 2 stars, and 3 and 4 and 5 and 9, and so forth and so on. I think there were 7 in total. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create just the single star, so it's the first Dragon Ball. But in the description below, I will show you how to create 5 Dragon Balls or 6 Dragon Balls, 6-star Dragon Balls, so that you can have it different from just 1 star, because 1 star is fairly easy. But I'm not going to waste time showing you how to move those around. You can read it in the description below. So what we're going to want to do is above the glass, below glass sphere and above the hue saturation, we're going to create a new layer. So now we've got our new layer, and let's just name this star. Okay, that'll make it easier for us later. And we're going to go to our custom shape tool. Now you can get there by hitting U on your keyboard like that, or click and then drag down to custom shape tool on the rectangular tool over here. Now what we're going to want is shape. We're going to want it to be regular fill, no stroke. Width and height doesn't matter. And we are going to go over here to shape. We're going to choose the star shape. Now if you don't see a star shape, let's say you can't find the 5-pointed star shape, you can go over here and you can go find shapes. It's under shapes or it's under symbols. I believe it's under shapes. Let's see. Hit OK. And yes, it is shapes. There is our 5-pointed star. So we click on that and we're good. Now, what you need to do is click anywhere on the image once. Don't drag, just click. And what we want to do is create a 400 by 400 pixel star right here. We're going to hit OK. We don't need it from center. We don't need preserved proportions. Hit OK. And we now have our star. Using the move tool, let's move it to the center. It'll snap into place just like that. And now what we want to do is we want to change its color, because it's supposed to be a red color. So we'll do that using our layer style, and we'll give it a color overlay. And we can then therefore choose whatever color that we want it to be. Now I happen to like kind of a darker red color, something like this, which for our purposes right now is C31111, which is a nice deep red. So that looks good to me. I will hit OK. And if you want to see this without the lines, you hit Control H on your keyboard to hide your guides, and Control H again will bring back the guides. So let's hit Control H. The guides are now gone, and we have our Dragon Ball. Now to see this a little bit better, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to fill our background with black so that you can see it a little bit nicer. And here we have our glass sphere. If I turn that off, you lose a lot of the reflections. So this makes it look a little bit more realistic, I believe. So now that we have all of this done, what you want to do is you want to turn this into an object that you can then bring into your other artwork and move around and resize, and you won't lose anything. So in order to do that, we're going to turn this entire group into a smart object, and we're going to name the smart object Dragon Ball. So you want to click on glass sphere, then hold down your shift key and then click on inner sphere. That will select all the layers that we have so far. Then right click on that, and we're going to go to convert to smart object. You click on that, and this will all get converted into one single object. You can then double click on it and rename it Dragon Ball. And we now have our Dragon Ball, and we can resize this to whatever size we want it to be, and everything will look the way it's supposed to. So there you have it, a Dragon Ball created in just a few minutes. I hope you liked this tutorial. If you did, please leave a comment, like this video, and subscribe. I'll be putting up new tutorials every Tuesday. And once again, this is Geekman signing off for Pixel Magic Tutorials.